The black limousine pulled up in front of Oriole, the most luxurious restaurant in New York City. It was Christmas Eve, and Ethan Hayes, CEO of Hayes Developments, adjusted his Italian tie as he watched the holiday decorations that blanketed Fifth Avenue. Golden lights blinked in a synchronized rhythm, artificial snowflakes fell gently upon the elegant pedestrians, and the muffled sound of Silent Night echoed from the speakers. He was there to close a $50 million deal over a dinner that would cost $5,000 a head. But when the driver opened the door, Ethan saw something that froze his heart. A barefoot girl in torn and dirty clothes, holding out her trembling hands, begging for food from the patrons entering the restaurant. He almost didn't recognize her. The brown hair that was always styled in perfect braids was now tangled and filthy. The cheeks that used to be rosy were now sunken and pale. The small hands, which he kissed every time he said goodbye before his trips, were chapped from the cold and covered in sores. "Please, ma'am, just a piece of bread," the weak, hoarse voice pleaded to a woman in a fur coat who ignored her completely. Ethan felt his legs weaken as the reality hit him like a punch to the gut. That was Sophia, his 8-year-old daughter, the same girl he had left at home 3 weeks ago, supposedly under the care of Melissa, his wife. She was the only daughter of a millionaire. At just 8 years old, she should have been celebrating Christmas in a 4,000-square-foot penthouse, opening expensive gifts, eating a feast prepared by private chefs. Instead, she was here, begging for scraps at the door of a restaurant where a single dessert cost more than she could gather from a whole month of begging. No medical treatment, no private school, no private security had prepared Ethan for this moment. He had trusted the wrong person, and when the world found out the truth about who had put that child on the freezing streets of New York on Christmas Eve, the image of a perfect family he had cultivated for years would be shattered forever. What that woman did in secret, without asking permission and without showing an ounce of remorse, brought Ethan to his knees on the sidewalk covered in artificial snow. Melissa had risked everything, not to save a child, but to destroy one. She chose a selfish love, the kind that thinks only of itself and is capable of abandoning an innocent girl to live out a fantasy with a lover. And when the truth came to light, when Ethan finally understood what had happened during those 3 weeks of travel, everything changed. This is the true story of how betrayal, when it comes from inside your own home, leaves not just scars but wounds that never fully close. And sometimes, the greatest monsters aren't in horror stories, but sitting at the dinner table, wearing a wedding ring and smiling for family photos. Before we continue with this story that will break your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching from. We love knowing that our message is reaching people everywhere, spreading awareness about situations that happen right under our noses. Every subscription, every like, every comment helps us continue to bring real stories that need to be told, stories that can open the eyes of fathers and mothers who trust the wrong people. Because in the end, it's not about judging, but about protecting those we love most. And this story will show you exactly why you should never let your guard down, even with the person sleeping next to you. Ethan was paralyzed for 5 seconds that felt like 5 hours. Around him, executives in suits entered the restaurant laughing. Elegant couples took selfies in front of the Christmas decorations. Security guards with earpieces checked the reservation list. No one paid attention to the dirty, barefoot girl trembling from the cold. No one saw that behind those desperate brown eyes was a child who had a name, a history, a family. To everyone there, Sophia was just another beggar, ruining the perfect aesthetic of the most magical night of the year. But for Ethan, that sight was the end of everything he believed about his life, his marriage, and his ability to protect the person he loved most in the world. He took 3 staggering steps toward her, and the girl looked up. Sophia didn't recognize him immediately. Her eyes were glazed over, lost in a distant place where pain can no longer reach. Ethan fell to his knees on the wet sidewalk, not caring that his $15,000 suit was being ruined, not caring about the curious stares of passers-by. "Sophia," his voice came out broken, unrecognizable. The girl blinked slowly, as if waking from a horrible nightmare. And then, when she finally recognized him, her small face contorted into an expression of such profound pain that Ethan felt his chest rip in two. "Daddy?" Her voice was just a hoarse whisper, almost inaudible amidst the noise of the avenue. Ethan pulled her into a desperate hug, feeling how thin she was, how every rib protruded under her torn blouse, how her body trembled violently from cold and exhaustion. She smelled of sewage, of smoke, of despair, of... This was not the scent of imported strawberry shampoo that always perfumed her hair. These were not the designer clothes that filled Sophia's closet. This was not the life he had promised to give his daughter when she was born, when he swore to protect her from all the evil in the world. And the question hammering in Ethan's head as he held that fragile little body was, how did this happen? How, in just 3 weeks, did his perfect life turn into this nightmare? But there was something even worse than finding Sophia in that state. It was the certainty that began to form in Ethan's mind, piece by piece, like a macabre puzzle assembling the complete picture. Melissa hadn't been answering her phone for 2 days. The joint bank account had been emptied the week before, something he had noticed but decided to ask about later. The apartment had no lights on when he passed by in a cab from the airport. Everything began to make sense in a nauseating and terrifying way. And the person responsible for putting Sophia in that frozen hell, for turning an innocent child into just another statistic of abandonment, was someone he loved, trusted, and called his wife. What if you trusted the wrong person to care for the most precious thing in your world? What if, while you worked 16 hours a day to provide comfort and security for your family, someone inside your own home was plotting the destruction of everything? This is not a story about a perfect father or a flawless victim. This is a story about how evil disguises itself as love, how betrayal wears a mask of devotion, and how sometimes we save our children not because we did everything right, but because in a single moment of attention, we looked in the right direction at the right time. Ethan was about to discover that not every monster looks like a monster. Some wear wedding rings, expensive perfume, and have perfect family albums on social media. 3 months before that Christmas Eve, Ethan Hayes woke up every day at 5 in the morning in his Upper East Side penthouse. At 42, with graying temples and custom-made suits, he was the personification of the American self-made man dream. The son of a janitor and a construction worker, he built a real estate empire valued at $50 million from scratch. Hayes Developments had projects in 6 states, 300 employees, and had just partnered with an international fund to build 3 luxury condominiums. But the price of this success was high. Ethan traveled 20 days a month, slept an average of 5 hours a night, and saw his daughter only through hurried video calls between meetings. He believed he was building a secure future for Sophia, but in reality, he was building a dangerous void that someone else would fill. Sophia Hayes was 8 years old and had the sweetest smile one could imagine. She was short for her age, wore round pink glasses, and had a collection of 93 colored pencils organized by shade on her hardwood desk. The girl loved to draw castles, princesses, and happy families sitting at the dinner table, something she rarely experienced in real life. She was shy at St. Anne's Preparatory School, where she had studied since she was 4, but she got excellent grades and never caused any trouble. On video calls with her father, she always said everything was fine, that she didn't need anything, that she understood Daddy was working a lot. Inside, Sophia missed him terribly, but she learned early on that showing emotional need made her father feel guilty, and that meant overly expensive gifts and even less time together. Melissa Roberts was 32 when she married Ethan 3 years ago, a former model, with a doll-like face and a sculpted body maintained with a personal trainer 6 times a week and a diet supervised by a private nutritionist. She met Ethan at a charity gala, where he was the main sponsor, and she modeled designer dresses to raise funds. Ethan was captivated by her beauty, by the way she laughed at his jokes, by the interest she showed in his life and business. 6 months later, they were married in a ceremony in Tuscany that cost $500,000 and was featured in 3 luxury magazines. To Ethan, Melissa was the perfect woman, elegant, educated, and always willing to take care of Sophia while he traveled. The apartment where they lived was a dream out of an architecture magazine. 4,000 square feet on the top floor of a building with only 4 units, a panoramic view of Central Park, double-height ceilings in the living room, 6 ensuite bedrooms, a climate-controlled wine cellar, and a private cinema. Melissa had decorated everything in shades of white, grey and gold with furniture imported from Italy and artwork by contemporary American artists. It was the kind of place where everything had to be perfect all the time, where a stain on the white sofa caused a drama of epic proportions. Sophia had a huge room, but she always felt too small inside it, as if she were living in a museum where she couldn't touch anything. The home was beautiful, but it wasn't cozy. It was a showcase, not a home. The family dynamic was simple and predictable. Ethan woke up early, had coffee alone while reading reports, and left before 7 in the morning. Sophia woke up at 7:30, was taken to school by the driver, came back at 3 in the afternoon, did her homework with a private tutor, had dinner at 7 with Melissa, and went to bed at 9. Melissa spent her days at the gym, at the beauty salon, at lunches with friends, and in appointments with her dermatologist, dentist, and cosmetic doctor. Ethan sent $30,000 every month to Melissa's account to cover the house expenses, and he never questioned what the money was spent on. He trusted her, and that blind trust would be the root of everything that was to come. But there were invisible cracks in this perfect facade. Melissa was bored. Her marriage to Ethan was comfortable but not exciting. He was kind but distant, rich but absent. She had everything money could buy, but she felt an emptiness that no designer handbag could fill. Sophia, in turn, was a constant reminder that Melissa was not the first woman in Ethan's life. The girl had the eyes of her biological mother, who had died of cancer when Sophia was 2. And whenever Melissa looked into those brown eyes, she saw the shadow of a woman Ethan had truly loved, not just for convenience or appearance. This resentment grew silently, day after day, like mold in a damp, dark basement. It was in May of that year that Melissa met Ryan at the Equinox gym. He was 24, had the body of a Greek god, tattoos on his arms, and that mischievous smile that promised adventure and danger. He was a personal trainer, earned $5,000 a month, and had absolutely nothing to lose. Melissa, on the other hand, had everything to lose, but that only made it more exciting. The training sessions turned into long conversations at the juice bar. The conversations turned into late-night WhatsApp messages. The messages turned into secret meetings in discreet motels while Sophia was at school. In 2 months, Melissa was completely obsessed, making crazy plans to leave everything behind and start a new life with Ryan somewhere paradisiacal. Ethan noticed nothing, or rather, he didn't want to notice. There were signs. Melissa started dressing up more for the gym, began smiling at her phone at random moments, invented last-minute commitments that made her rush out. But Ethan was so immersed in spreadsheets, projects, and meetings that he chose to believe everything was fine. After all, he gave Melissa everything she needed: money, freedom, social status. What more could a woman want? Ethan didn't understand that people don't work like businesses, that relationships don't grow with just financial investment, that presence is worth more than presence. And this emotional ignorance was about to cost him far more than he could ever imagine. The relationship between Melissa and Sophia was cordial, but cold. Melissa fulfilled her obligations. She made sure the girl ate, went to school, did her homework. But there was no genuine affection, no spontaneous hugs, no mother-daughter talks that build true bonds. Sophia felt this and tried to compensate by being the most polite and obedient child possible. She never asked for anything, never complained, never cried in front of Melissa. It was as if, instinctively, Sophia knew she was walking on dangerous ground, that any misstep could cause an avalanche. And she was right, because behind the scenes, while pretending to be the perfect stepmother in family photos, Melissa was already planning how to get rid of everything, including the girl. The inciting incident happened on a hot afternoon in September. Ryan told Melissa he was tired of hiding their relationship, that he wanted to live something real, that he was willing to drop everything and leave for the Caribbean if she went with him. "But you have to choose," he said. "Either you come with me and we start from scratch, or we end this now and each go our own way." Melissa returned home that afternoon and looked around. The magazine-perfect apartment, the jewels in the safe, the bank statements showing monthly expenses equivalent to Ryan's annual salary. And then she looked at Sophia, who was on the sofa drawing a castle full of flowers. The decision Melissa made in that moment would seal the girl's fate and transform Ethan into a completely different man. Because sometimes, the greatest tragedies begin with small, selfish choices that at first seem to have no consequences, but they always do. Melissa's decision was made in silence over 3 weeks of meticulous planning. She wasn't stupid. She knew she couldn't just pack her bags and disappear without raising suspicion. Ethan needed to be out of the country, far enough away that he couldn't return quickly. The perfect opportunity arose when he announced he was going to Dubai to close a $25 million contract with Arab investors. It would be a 3-week trip, the longest of the year. Melissa smiled sweetly when he broke the news, kissed him goodbye at the airport, and began to set her plan in motion before his plane even took off. Ryan already had tickets booked to the Bahamas, a 5-star resort reserved, and an offshore bank account waiting to be funded. In the first week, Melissa acted as if nothing was happening. She took Sophia to school, sent affectionate messages to Ethan, and posted photos on Instagram showing the perfect routine of a dedicated mother. But behind the scenes, she was systematically transferring money from their joint accounts to accounts in her name. 15,000 here, 20,000 there, always in amounts that wouldn't trigger immediate bank alerts. She opened the apartment safe and took out all the jewelry, the diamond necklace Ethan gave her on their first wedding anniversary, the emerald earrings, the white gold bracelet. In total, $200,000 in precious stones that she would sell abroad. Melissa was methodical, calculating, and completely detached from any sense of moral or maternal responsibility. In the second week, Melissa began to prepare Sophia for abandonment, although the girl didn't know it. She drastically reduced the grocery shopping, saying she was doing a pantry clean-out. She dismissed the driver with an excuse about cutting costs. She sent the housekeeper away, claiming she wanted more privacy. One by one, Melissa removed all the safety nets around Sophia, isolating the girl completely. Sophia found it strange, asked what was happening, but Melissa would smile and say it was all temporary, that things would soon be back to normal. The girl, accustomed to not questioning adults, accepted the explanations and tried not to worry. After all, Daddy would be back in a week and everything would be fine again. The catalyzing event happened in the early hours of December 10th, exactly 15 days before Christmas. Melissa waited for Sophia to fall asleep after a light dinner of soup and bread. She entered the girl's room at 2 in the morning, watched that innocent little face deep in sleep for a moment, and felt absolutely nothing. No remorse, no hesitation, no pang of conscience. To Melissa, Sophia was just an obstacle between her and the life she truly wanted. She took a large suitcase, filled it with her most expensive clothes, her designer shoes, her imported beauty products. She checked her bank account on her phone. $150,000 successfully transferred. Ryan was waiting at the airport. It was time to go. Before leaving, Melissa left a note on the kitchen table. It wasn't a warm or explanatory farewell note. It was cruel, to the point, and calculated to cause the maximum possible pain. Ethan, I'm tired of pretending to care about you and that child. I took what was rightfully mine after 3 years of putting up with your absence and your wrong priorities. Don't try to find me. Don't try to contact me. Good luck finding your daughter. You're going to need it. She's your problem now, not mine. Melissa. She placed the note under the salt shaker, grabbed her suitcase and walked out of the apartment without looking back. The door closed with a soft click at 3:15 a.m., and Sophia kept sleeping, completely unaware that her life had just turned into a nightmare. Sophia woke up at 8 in the morning with the sun streaming through her bedroom window. She called for Melissa, but there was no answer. She went down to the kitchen expecting to find breakfast prepared, but the counter was empty. She found it strange, searched the house, checked all the rooms. Melissa's closet was empty. The jewelry was gone from the master bedroom safe. The large suitcase that was kept in storage had disappeared. Sophia felt a knot in her stomach, the kind of instinctive fear children have when they realize something is very, very wrong. She tried to call her father, but Ethan was in a meeting 7 time zones away, and the phone went straight to voicemail. Daddy, Aunt Melissa isn't here. I'm scared. Please call me. Her voice trembled in the message. The first 2 days were a blur of confusion and controlled panic. Sophia ate what she found in the fridge: yogurt, cheese, leftover chicken. She tried calling her father 17 more times, but he was in a series of crucial meetings, and his assistant had instructions not to interrupt him for anything less than a life-or-death emergency. Sophia's messages got lost amidst hundreds of work emails and notifications. The girl didn't know what to do. She had no money, no close friends to ask for help. The school was on winter break. She was left alone in that enormous, cold apartment, waiting for someone to come and save her. But no one came. On the third day, the power was cut off. Melissa had cancelled the automatic payment before she left, knowing it would expedite the eviction. Sophia was left in the dark, cold, using blankets to keep warm during the frigid December night. On the fourth day, the building manager knocked on the door. He was a 50-year-old man, brusque and with no patience for drama. "Where are your parents? The condo fees are 3 months overdue. Either you pay by tomorrow or I'll have to file for eviction." Sophia explained that her father was traveling, that he would be back soon, that she didn't know where the money was. The manager was unmoved. "Not my problem. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., either the payment is made or you're out." He slammed the door and Sophia collapsed on the floor crying. On the fifth day, at precisely 10:05 a.m., 2 marshals and the building manager entered the apartment. Sophia was sitting in the living room hugging a blanket, her eyes red from crying. "Where is the legal guardian?" one of the marshals asked. "Traveling," Sophia whispered. "And the mother?" "She left." The 2 men exchanged uncomfortable glances. They had a job to do. They couldn't get emotionally involved. "Do you have any relatives, anyone to pick you up?" Sophia shook her head. The impatient manager interrupted. "I don't have time for social services. The order is for immediate eviction. Get your things and get out." Sophia, with trembling hands, put a few clothes, her colored pencils, and a drawing of her father into a pink school backpack. At 10:40 a.m., she was on the sidewalk, alone, with nowhere to go. That was how Sophia became another statistic among New York City's homeless children. Not because of extreme poverty, not because of addicted parents, but because of the pure, calculated malice of a woman who chose luxury and passion over the life of an innocent child. Sophia spent the first night sleeping under the awning of a closed pharmacy, 2 blocks from the apartment where she used to live. She woke up several times, cold, scared, hungry. She saw couples walking hand in hand to restaurants, happy families returning from Christmas shopping, children her age with protective parents. And she wondered, with the childish logic that tries to make sense of chaos, what did I do wrong? Why doesn't Daddy love me anymore? Why did Aunt Melissa leave me? The next 2 weeks were a slow-motion descent into hell. Sophia quickly learned the cruel rules of survival on the streets. Wake up before sunrise to avoid being chased away by security guards. Find public restrooms in malls to wash up minimally. Avoid men who stared too much. Never sleep too deeply. The December cold in New York was biting in the early morning hours, and Sophia only had a thin sweatshirt and a pair of jeans to protect herself. Her fingers turned purple from the cold. She developed a persistent cough that burned her chest with every deep breath. Her lips chapped and bled. Her hair became tangled in impossible knots. But the worst part wasn't the physical suffering. It was the absolute loneliness, the feeling of having been erased from the world, of not mattering to anyone. She tried to call her father from payphones, using coins she found on the ground or that kind people sometimes gave her. But something was wrong. The phone would ring, the assistant would answer, and when Sophia said her name, the call would simply drop. She didn't understand what was happening. In truth, Melissa had planned even this macabre detail before she left. Using Ethan's phone while he slept, she had blocked Sophia's number on all apps and set up a filter on his voicemail that redirected any call with the name Sophia to a mailbox that would never be checked. Melissa wanted to ensure that father and daughter wouldn't communicate until it was too late, until she was safe in another country with no possibility of swift extradition. It was a diabolical plan executed with surgical precision. On her 10th day on the street, Sophia met Irene. She was a 60-year-old woman, her gray hair in a bun, her face marked by deep wrinkles that told stories of suffering. Irene had been living on the streets for 12 years, ever since she lost her job as a seamstress and couldn't pay her rent. She slept under an awning on Fifth Avenue, had a shopping cart with all her belongings, and a survival wisdom that only decades on the street can teach. When she saw Sophia, thin, trembling, clearly unprepared for that life, Irene felt a pang in her heart. "Come here, child, you can't be alone, it's too dangerous." Sophia, exhausted and desperate, accepted the help. Irene became her impromptu guardian, her only ally in a world that had become hostile and frightening. Irene taught Sophia where to get food. Churches that distributed soup on Tuesdays and Thursdays, bakeries that gave away old bread at the end of the day, restaurants where kind cooks sometimes came out with leftovers. She showed her where the cleanest public restrooms were, which police officers were tolerant and which were violent, what times it was safe to sleep and when they needed to be alert. Irene shared her worn-out blanket, divided her scraps of food, and told funny stories to make Sophia smile even in the midst of misery. But there were obstacles that even Irene's experience couldn't overcome. The constant hunger that made Sophia's stomach ache as if it were filled with broken glass, the brutal cold that seeped into her bones, the dangerous men who lurked at night. The internal conflict Sophia faced was devastating for an 8-year-old. She constantly blamed herself. "If I were prettier, Aunt Melissa wouldn't have left. If I got better grades, Daddy would spend more time with me. If I were quieter, less trouble, easier to love, this wouldn't have happened." These are the distorted thoughts that abandoned children develop, taking responsibility for adult cruelties that were never their fault. Sophia would cry softly during the nights, biting her fist to muffle the sound, wondering if her father had forgotten her, if she was that disposable. The emotional wound was much deeper than any physical injury. Sophia tried different strategies to survive and to find help. She stayed near police precincts, but was afraid to approach them because Melissa had once said, in a threatening tone during one of Sophia's tantrums, that disobedient children go to orphanages where they get beaten every day. She tried to ask for food at restaurants, but was chased away by security 9 times out of 10. She tried to sell cans she collected, but recycling centers wouldn't buy from children without a responsible adult. Every attempt to improve her situation was met with a new bureaucratic obstacle or more human cruelty. The world, Sophia was discovering, was not made to protect vulnerable children. It was made to ignore them until they disappeared completely. The consequences of this life were visible and terrifying. Sophia lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks. Her face became gaunt, and deep, dark circles formed under her eyes. The cough evolved into something more serious. She started having fevers at night, sweating cold and shaking uncontrollably. Irene recognized the signs. Pneumonia was setting in. "Child, you need a hospital," Irene said with concern. But Sophia was afraid of hospitals, afraid they would find out she was alone and send her somewhere even worse. So she carried on day after day, dragging her sick little body through the cold streets, waiting for a miracle that never seemed to come. The hardest decision Sophia had to make was to accept that maybe her father really wasn't coming back. It was a possibility she didn't want to consider, but it became more real with each passing day. Maybe he had decided it was easier to start a new life without her. Maybe Melissa had told terrible lies that made him believe Sophia wasn't worth it. Maybe he simply didn't care enough. This acceptance broke something fundamental inside Sophia. She stopped trying to call, stopped looking for police officers, stopped waiting to be rescued. She began to accept that this was her life now. Hunger, cold, fear, and the company of a kind homeless woman who had become the only family she had. What was at stake was no longer being saved. It was simply surviving until the next day. But the relationship Sophia built with Irene was her emotional salvation. Irene had nothing material to offer, but she gave something infinitely more valuable: presence, attention, genuine care. She would comb Sophia's hair with her fingers, sing old songs to help her sleep, invent silly games to distract her from the hunger. Irene told her own story, not with bitterness but with wisdom, how she lost everything, how she survived, how she still found reasons to smile. "You know what I've learned, Sophia. People aren't defined by what they have, but by what they do with what they have left. And what you have left, child, is a good heart. Don't let this street steal that from you. Those words became Sophia's mantra, the only thing that kept her from giving up completely. Don't forget to leave a like if this story is touching your heart. Comment below if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, or if you know of similar cases. Every comment helps us bring more awareness to child abandonment, and if you're not subscribed yet, click the bell now because this story is far from over, and what comes next will leave you speechless. You won't want to miss the moment when the truth finally comes to light and Ethan discovers exactly what happened. Because when a father finds out that his daughter suffered because of the pure malice of someone he loved, the thirst for justice knows no bounds. And Melissa was about to find out that running away to paradise doesn't mean you escape the consequences. Ethan Hayes landed at JFK Airport at 6 in the morning on December 23rd, exhausted but satisfied. 3 weeks in Dubai had been worth it. $25 million in contracts signed, a partnership with an Arab investment fund secured, international expansion finally becoming a reality. He bought expensive gifts for Sophia at the duty-free shop, a collection of 150 imported colored pencils, a Disney backpack studded with glitter, 5 professional-level drawing books. He imagined her face lighting up when she opened everything on Christmas. He tried calling home from the cab, but the phone rang and no one answered.